Hi guys, I'm Michaela and I'm going to talk today about exceptionalities in the classroom. So to start us off, I'm going to talk about learning disabilities. So some characteristics of learning disabilities is having low academic achievement in several areas. Technically, they may only have low achievement in one area, but oftentimes, and most times, it is at least 3 or 4 or more. They mostly have problems with processing new information. So like if you are practicing with them on Monday, teaching them to count consistently 1 through 5, they may be able to do that with a lot of success on Monday, and then on Tuesday you go to practice it and it's gone. That is a telltale sign of a learning disability. So some universal design ideas for these students are going to range very widely because of the many problems that are associated with this disability. But in general, direct instruction, modeling, and breaking long assignments into smaller tasks will be very successful for the student. Modeling is showing how you want a task done and helping them to do that. And breaking long assignments into shorter tasks might look like, instead of working on 20 math problems at a time, maybe they work on 2 or 5, depending on how difficult they are for that student. Next, I'm going to talk about students that have communication disorders. And so characteristics of communication disorders are the inability to understand or make the sounds of speech. And so they will often have problems with grammar. They may be nonverbal and not speak at all. And they will have limited word choice and trouble with simple directions. And so they may speak like a toddler does. And so instead of saying something like, "I would like some juice, please," they may say simply, "juice." So some universal design ideas for these students are allowing multiple ways to communicate, written and verbal, or signing or pointing even are other ways to communicate rather than verbally. Allow them extra time to respond to you because they're having trouble understanding what you're trying to say to them, or even understanding that you are speaking to them. Give them extra time to respond to you and process what you're saying to them. And when you are speaking to them, make sure you're making eye contact with them so that they understand that you are speaking directly to them. And encourage them to practice their speech as often as possible. Next, I'm going to talk about students with emotional disorders. So some characteristics of emotional disorder are that they will often have high anxiety or will be anxious often. They're often emotional disorders are co-diagnosed often with mood disorders, bipolar disorder, conduct disorder, operational defiant disorder, and externalizing and internalizing behaviors. Externalizing behavior might be something like excessive dieting or exercise, and an internalizing behavior might be something like isolating themselves from others or not seeking out peers. And then sometimes emotional disorders stem from a language disorder that caused the inability to understand and communicate with adults, which causes students to lash out or act out in frustration. So some universal design ideas for emotional disorder are wraparound supports. So you're meeting with the school psychologist, the school counselor, the principal, the parents, the speech pathologist, the special education team. All of those people are meeting together to collaborate on how they're going to support the student at school. Give them some choice in the tasks that they have, and behavior-specific praise. So when you see them acting the way that you want them to, make sure you point that out to that student. And finally, as with all students, but especially those with emotional disorders, form a meaningful relationship with them and ask them about their interests and have casual conversations with them as many times as you can. So next I'm going to talk about the fan favorite, which is ADHD. So some characteristics of students with ADHD are, the DSM characterizes the ADHD as inattention and hyperactivity and impulsivity that is pervasive and impacts learning. And so they are so unable to attend to a task or keep their body in control that their learning has been either heated or very delayed. So the universal design ideas for students with ADHD are giving them a quiet place to work, which is free from distractions. So you're not sitting there next to a door or a window or in high traffic areas like cubby spaces or pencil sharpeners. Give them very clear and specific instructions and give them one task to complete at a time. Giving them extra time on assignments and chunking the large assignments into smaller ones will have the student have success in their school setting. Now I'm going to talk about students with intellectual disabilities. The characteristics of an intellectual disabilities are significant limitations in intellectual functioning and adaptive behavior. So intellectual functioning are things like memory and recognition, facial recognition, and task ordering. And adaptive behavior are things like social skills. These problems must originate before the age of 18, and they will also often have delays in social, cognitive, and adaptive behavior skills, and so they will have trouble learning those skills. Some universal design ideas for these students are direct instruction on non-academic areas. So teaching them how to initiate a conversation with someone, or teaching them how to be a good friend. Break down large tasks, again, that chunking. They also benefit from small group or one-on-one instruction. And teach them one step at a time so that they're mastering each step before moving on and learning another step, so they're not confused or overwhelmed. And use physical and verbal prompts intermixed. And actually, in my opinion, I think that verbal cues create a lot of prompt dependence, and so I think it's better to use physical cues when you can. I'm going to talk now about autism. So the characteristics of autism are social and communication impairments, restrictive or repetitive behaviors, the classic hand flapping. They sometimes have problem behavior that is in sensory disorders, so that they don't like certain sounds or certain textures. They're very picky about their environment. So some universal design ideas for these students are teaching strategies are going to vary greatly due to the individual needs of these students, but you can include many visual supports around the classroom, like daily schedules are very, very good for them. They may have icons to know when they're going to get their next break, so that they don't feel like it's the impending foreverness of the unknown. And then include their learning goals and share your learning goals with them, so that they understand what you're looking to get from out of the lesson. And as always, building a healthy relationship with the student will allow you to get a glimpse inside their mind and what makes them tick and what helps them. Next is multiple disabilities, and so the characteristics of those are intellectual functioning impairments, adaptive skill impairments, motor development deficiencies, sensory function deficiencies, and communication disorders. So these students typically have trouble in all areas of functioning or in many different areas. And so some universal design ideas for these students are going to, again, depend heavily on the student and their individual needs, but they can benefit from peer tutoring, having someone in your class teaching them on a subject area, which not only gives them practice with the content, but it also gives them practice with their social skills as well. Next is physical disabilities. So some characteristics of physical disabilities are coordination and balance problems. This is where cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy fall under. They're often very tired because just walking down the hall, which is simple maybe for me or you, is much more challenging for these students. They will have trouble with functional problems, like being able to tie their shoes or button their shirt, and because of their disability, they often have social deficiencies because their disability kind of causes other students not to engage with them. So in your classroom, if you have someone with physical disability, make sure you treat them like they're your student, like they are. Treat them like the person that they are and include them in your classroom and encourage positive relationships between the students. So some universal design ideas for these are creating large spaces to move around in your classroom. So making desks and tables and other obstacles in the classroom farther apart so that it's easier for these students to get around your classroom. Having them have a note taker to take notes for them, and extended time to complete assignments. Next is traumatic brain injury, and so characteristics of those are neurological problems such as speech, vision, or motor coordination. Cognitive issues with problem solving, memory, concentration, and behavioral problems. They may be very aggressive, often depressed, and very impulsive. Social deficiency, which is they may have the inability or no longer possess the ability to form and maintain relationships, and so these people are often kind of pushed to the side and forgotten about. So some universal design ideas are to avoid figurative language, so of similes, metaphors, things that are not concrete. Keep the classroom free from distractions, which is best practice for your classroom anyway, but rather than playing like boppy music during work time, some quiet workspaces are usually best. Demonstrate tasks and then provide examples of what you want the task to look like, the finished task to look like. And then next, I will talk about students that have hearing loss. So some characteristics of that is partial or total loss of hearing. It will have an impact on social development because they are unable to hear. They are often unable to communicate with a shared communication system with other students, and they have trouble making friends because of that. Their speech and language will be delayed again because they are not able to hear speech sounds. So some universal design ideas are to use sound amplification systems. When you're playing videos, play them loudly. Use closed captioning. Get a note taker or an interpreter that can interpret sign language, or just simply learn sign language. It's a good skill to have, and you'll definitely use it. So it's a good investment to learn how to do that. Next, I will talk about students with visual impairments. So characteristics are obviously low vision, no vision, and their vision impairment is going to affect their learning, obviously, because many things are done on a screen or up on the board or on a piece of paper, and they may have sensitivity to light or problems contrasting different colors. So learning their colors may be a problem because they may only see in black and white. So some universal design ideas are to make sure that you understand that these accommodations are going to be very varied because each student with a visual impairment is going to be different. But you could sit student near the speaker and where lessons are going to be presented most of the time so that they're close to the presenter. And use verbal cues when you can, so pairing verbal cues with physical cues, and access to instructional materials just like their other peers are. So if you need to get something in a large print or in Braille, you need to make sure that you're making arrangements to do that. Next, I'm going to talk about gifted students. Characteristics of gifted students is having just high general intellect and specific academic aptitude. They're born leaders, and they often don't have anxiety or depression because they can conceptualize. So universal design ideas for the gifted is to give them independent projects and vertical enrichment and level assignments for all different levels for all levels of the classroom so that each student gets what they need. I want to thank you for watching, and my time's all up, so thanks for watching.